This podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/TSE. Audible has over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Again, simply go to audibletrial.com/TSE. It's a gift from us to you. Our guest today is going to speak about the idea of work-life balance, and he is an awesome guest. I've actually been able to connect with him, and the book that I'm reading, Kevin Cruz has a book. It's called The 15 Secrets Successful People Know About Time Management. And Kevin is actually coming on a podcast as well in the next couple days, and I highly recommend you check out his book. But if you want to get a free copy, just simply go to audibletrial.com/TSE. I know you're going to enjoy it. Again, audibletrial.com/TSE. We have all the information in our show notes to get a free copy for yourself. Man, this work-life balance thing ain't working out too well for me, man. I'm done with it. Let's just go home. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist podcast. I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. Our guest today is Devon Bandison. Devon actually is awesome when it comes down to time management and to focusing on the things that really matter the most. He works a lot with dads and helping dads become leaders. He also works a lot with businesses, with enterprises, entrepreneurs, and salespeople like you and me. So today I decided to bring him on a show. We had a conversation. We met about a month ago, and we were talking about the idea of the work-life balance. And he gave me some interesting ideas about why this is such a myth with the work-life balance. It's a great episode, great discussion. But before we dive into all the fun stuff, I got to give some shout-outs today. I want to give a big shout out this week to Hap. Thank you so much, Hap, for connecting. I enjoy the story about the gorilla suit guy. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Also, Patrick, thank you so much. Welcome to the Evangelizers. Elizabeth, welcome to the Evangelizers. Brad, thank you so much as well, and welcome to the Evangelizers. And Wachana, thank you so much for connecting with us. Welcome to the Evangelizers. If you'd like to get connected with the Sales Evangelizers, just go to Facebook or on LinkedIn and search for the Sales Evangelizers. We're on both LinkedIn and Facebook now, so go ahead and connect. Love to connect with you. That's where we have other sellers, entrepreneurs, people like you and me who ask questions, share thoughts and insights, build strategic alliances, and just have a good time. Check it out. Feel free to introduce yourself. It's the Sales Evangelizers. Or you can go ahead and like our Facebook page, the Sales Evangelist. Or if you want to connect with me personally, you can find me on LinkedIn, Donald C. Kelly. On Twitter, Donald C. Kelly. You can also find me on Instagram, Donald C. Kelly. Either way, I'd love to connect with you. Just want to make sure that we're friends, we connect, we're buddies. You could tell me about your life story, all that good stuff. But seriously, I'd love to connect with you. And if you'd like to take your sales to a whole nother level this year, you got to check out TSE Hustlers League. Simply go to thesalesevangelist.com/hustlers, thesalesevangelist.com/hustlers. Love to have you join. Check it out. Now, we're going to sit back, get our Evernotes, our pens and paper ready. We're going to dive into this episode. Let's do it. Welcome to the show, Devon.
Hey, Donald. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
Dude, I'm excited to have you, man. I know you're going to bring us tons of value today as we go and chat on this topic. I gave a little bit of introduction to you already in a teaser, but why don't you give us a little bit more tell us a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, well, it's been a great journey. I started out in New York City developing programs for at-risk youth and first-time fathers. And from that, I was into leadership development a lot. And a few years back, I went on my own, started my own business as a life and business coach, and combined the two things I love the most, which is fatherhood and leadership. So right now I do a lot of transformational life and business coaching, and I do some speaking out here in the world. And it's been an amazing journey.
That is fantastic, man. I told him how we met. We met at a podcast meetup back in the end of last year. And one of the things that was the early part of this year is January. The year's going by so quick, man, I'm telling you.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But one of the things that we chat about was the idea of work-life balance and just how that could be a myth. And I just wanted to debunk that, to chat today, to learn from you, someone who's an expert in this field, and give us some thoughts and insight. Because as a sales professional or as an entrepreneur, we have families, we have, work, we have other stuff that we need to get done. Maybe it's a civic responsibilities or church or whatever. We want to make sure that we maximize and use our time effectively. So let's go ahead and just start right into it. One of the things that I mentioned that day was like work-life balance. And you kind of gave me an answer on that. You mind sharing what your feelings are on just the term itself, work-life balance?
Yeah, for me, the term in and of itself is just wrong. And what it does is it gives the impression that it's a zero-sum game, right? So, this work-life balance, that there's this perfect harmony and there's balance between these areas in our life. When I go out and work with organizations, we talk a lot about how do you successfully integrate work and life, like work-life integration. And then the second part of it is, just look at the word work-life. The other assumption is work is more important than your life. So I look at the whole thing as, let's take a look at the whole work-life balance and throw it out the window. I think what we're doing today in our day and time is our life's work. And I also think that there's an important way to look at the areas of your life. I look at 4 areas: home, work, self, and community, and not look at it as balance, because as a balance, you would see kind of like this scale. And out of 100%, you would spend 25% here, 25% here, and it'll all equal 100. Well, we know, Donald, that that's not how life works. So I look at exploring better ways to show up and integrate work life, so you have some not only work life integration, but satisfaction and fulfillment. So you're not burnt out. So you're showing up as the best version of yourself that you can be, the leader you want to be, whether it's in the sales world, whether it's at home, or whether it's in your community.
Very interesting thought. And I mean, the more you share that, and I'm sitting here thinking, could that be the cause of this ongoing stress that so many people feel, so many sellers? Because, sales take so much time from you, where you have to get things done. And, with, you have your family, I think that could be the cause of a lot of stress, that I have to balance this in X way.
Absolutely. Because when you set it up like a zero-sum game, guys who are going out there and trying to put bread and food on their family's table at some point gets the feeling of, guilt and shame. And that causes stress and anxiety, which is not conducive to showing up as the best version of yourself that you can be. So what I try to do is look at people's life, look at the things they value, and then create a world, create the day that you want to show up where you can put the time, the effort, the energy, the focused time on the things you value most. For me, life has become really simple. My family's super important there at the top of the list, but also building my business, because I'm in the business of people, of helping people change their lives. So it's important that whatever aspect of my life that I am focused on, that I give it 100%, that I show up powerfully. So I'm not cheating my children. So I'm not cheating the people I work with. But there's a way to do that without having to think that, okay, if I don't stop at this time, if I work past 5 o'clock, that means I'm going to be stressed out and I'm going to have anxiety, when, sometimes that's just the nature of the beast.
Let's talk about some of the possible solutions, some things that we can do to better have this integration. If I was, say your client, and, I'm like, man, dude, it's been so tough. I'm trying to get this work-life, quote unquote, balance going. My wife's mad at me. The kids haven't seen them in 2 weeks. Business is not doing as great as I want it to be. Missed out on a couple of deals. What's the first thing you would talk to me about in order to get my life balance, get my schedule going? There we go, using balance again.
Yeah, and balance isn't a bad word, Donald, but you know what I mean?
I know what you mean, yeah.
It's been ingrained in us so much that I think it does set us up for failure, and it sets us up also to be anxious and feeling bad about the things we're doing in our daily day. So if you're a client, what I would do is take some time to slow everything down and really look at the things, identify the things in your life that you value most, right? Mm-hmm. Because to me, leadership is about how you choose to mobilize towards a valued goal. So we got to understand what you value in your life. And in the most important sense, it's how you become an agent of influence in your own life to make it a richer life. So we would look at things like conversations. I would say, well, what do you value the most? People would say time with my children, my business, I want to get to the gym. And what I would say is take 5 days and put a percentage on that. So they'll say, and it only can equal 100%. So Donald would say, my family's 40%, my business is 30%, my community is 20%, and then 10% self, which is probably backwards, right? Mm-hmm. Or whatever it works for you. And then I'd look over 5 days and say, now I want you to put the percentage of time that you're actually putting in these 4 domains. And when people go through that, what they find is the things they say they value most, Donald, they're not spending the most time with. It's not equaling out. So first identifying it. And then second would be creating a routine where you're showing up and you're focused to finish. So for instance, my morning routine is very important because I used to be the guy who had the cell phone next to the bed and I had the computer a couple feet away. And once I woke up, I was on emails, I was going out and serving the world. And my coach actually turned to me and said, well, Devon, let me get this right. You go out and you give all of yourself to the world and you don't give yourself the time for you to replenish yourself. How can you give people the best? It's the old analogy from the plane, right? When the oxygen mask comes on, it doesn't say put the oxygen mask on your children, your wife, or your friend. It says put the oxygen mask on yourself first. So the second thing, Donald, would be to create a routine where you're filling your cup. I like the analogy of the cup with the coaster under it. And what happens in sales, right, is that guys are always out there serving. They're always out there, hustling, and they keep filling people out of their cup. And then eventually their cup becomes dry and they become burnt out. So what a routine in the morning does is, and looking at the things you value is, my work with people is to fill that cup so much, Donald, that now when you go out in the sales world and you're really hustling, that you're feeding people not from your cup, but from the overflow of your cup. You're filling people from that coaster underneath your cup. So it's important that you take the time to focus on your nutrition, going to the gym, things like that, and creating a routine where you can have that in your daily day. And then the third thing I like to talk about is no blending. So for instance, if I go home and I have a Friday night pizza night, which I have every Friday with my children.
Yeah. I used to do that with my uncle.
That's right.
My cousin was my cousin.
Right. So it's a routine that we go through every Friday night. And for those 2.5 hours, from the ride to the pizza, I shut things down and there's no blending into my work. And vice versa. When I'm at work and I have a 2-hour block where I am just working on some things for a client or I'm developing some content, I don't blend into other things of my life unless it's an emergency. But most of the time, it's not. So those are the three things. Identify what you value, I create a routine, and then no blending.
Just a couple things I want to go back to. First one was number 2. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. I feel that a lot of salespeople, from my experience, I've been doing this podcast now for a little bit over 2 years, going on 2.5 years. And one of the things that I've come to realize is that I find people who, may start listening to the podcast, they're new to sales. And then over a course of, X amount of time, they find themselves burnt out with sales. I really feel that ties back to number 2 a lot, man, where they get so amped up. I'm going to make money. I'm going to do well. But then they so neglect the other important things and they realize, oh man, I can't keep doing this. It's not working out for me because they didn't give any time for themselves. So you gave everybody out of your cup and you didn't give any time for yourself. And I think that definitely ties back with that retention rate that businesses may have with sellers.
Yeah. So when I go into business, that's the first thing we talk about is retention rate and employee engagement. That if their employees are not focused on filling their cup and creating a life where they're taking care of themselves, in the short term, they might be successful. But in the long-term game, they're going to eventually be burnt out and have to start again. And you don't want to do that because when employees have to call out sick, when they're not, taking care of themselves and they're feeling under the weather, then it affects sales. It affects money and it affects business. So how do we create something where these guys can show up and make sure that they're filling their own cup? So things like building in your day a routine, and I have things where people don't know, like guys come to me and they'll say, hey, Devon, what do you want to do? I ask them, what do you want to do? I want to be successful. And I would say, well, would you know what success looks like if it hits you in the head? Because honestly, and I'm a little tongue in cheek, but the truth is that people have other people's vision of success as their success. So what we look at and say, well, what do you really want? What does success look like? Is it this amount of sales, this amount of business, but also this amount of time with my family? Is it important to you to get home by 7 o'clock every night? If that's important, we can create that, but you have to identify first what it looks like. So I have people draw up what a successful day look like, what would an ideal day look like, and we work from there. The second part of it is I do this. I have 2 versions of this. One I do at home and one I do when I go travel and speak on the road, is that it's called when you're at your best. So for me, I'm at my best. So I look at my best sales day, or when I go back and I was really in tune and I was coaching someone, I was, and I was just present and just powerful that day. I look at that last day and then I reverse engineer it, Donald. I look at the last 24 hours before that. I look at how much I slept, what my morning routine was, who were the people I was around, maybe what music I listened to, what did I eat for breakfast? And I write down 7 to 10 things where I am at my best. So I'm usually at my best with about 7 hours of sleep. When I make bulletproof coffee, when I meditate, when I get some exercise in, when I have some laughter in my life, things like that I've created a list. It's different when I go on the road. And more times than not, when I'm feeling burnt out or when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I look at that list and I probably haven't done most of the things on my list. So as salespeople, you have to be your best customer. You have to understand that if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to serve in the long run. You may have some short-term success, but if you get burnt out, your engagement goes down, your retention goes down in businesses, and your sales will eventually go down. So that's what kind of some of the stuff we'll focus on.
The one thing I like too that you mentioned in the third part, the no blending, it's the concept of really focusing, like hyper focus. When I played soccer, one of the things that we recognize is, I could have played multiple positions in soccer, but I was a defender. That's where I stayed and I played defense. Sometimes I played midfield, but when I was in my position, I was in my position. I was in the zone. I was focused. I wasn't worried about the forward. I wasn't worried about the other players, the goalie. My goal was, it was protect the goalie, but it was, you don't want to sit there and try to do other people role. You want to focus on your zone and what you have to get done. And I think that's the same thing that applies too with what you mentioned with no blending. You got to shut those things off. I really like the idea where, when you go out with pizza with the kids, the phone is off. Or when you're at work, you have those 2 hours, you're in the zone, shut it off. My wife knows, like when I'm doing some content creation as well, like Mondays today, we're recording podcasts. That's what today is all focused on. So I'll put my phone in airplane mode when I'm, in some certain process, and it's going to stay in airplane mode. If it's an emergency, she'll email me and, I'll get to that. But usually there's not an emergency. So I love that, man. And I think that's where a lot of people neglect to look at when they're out there hustling.
Absolutely. And great points all around. I think that, and it's a practice, right? So guys, I know that when they tune in, they're going to say, well, I can't do that. And it's hard because anything you started that you haven't done as a routine will get you out your comfort zone. But what I've learned is if you create a practice, if you just do it every day, if you extend the time, maybe you start it for a half hour and you keep extending the time, that you'll see how much, it's almost the 80-20 rule. Now I wake up and my life is not packed back to back with business stuff, but it's really focused on the things that I value most. And it's the things that as a businessman are going to create the most revenue and the most impact in the world. There's this thing called pay time, right? Have you heard of pay time?
No.
Yeah. So pay time is kind of like this concept of, look, as entrepreneurs, we're working all day, every day. We're on the hustle. I get it. As salespeople, same thing. But if you worked like a 9 to 5, there's time where you have pay time, right? You're expected to work out of the 8-hour day, maybe 7.25 hours, and maybe you have a 15-minute break and a 45-minute lunch. But the rest is pay time. So what I look at people's day who says they're not as productive or efficient as they want, we look over the period, say you're working as an entrepreneur, as a salesperson for 8 hours, how much of that time is really focused on pay time, on things that will create revenue from you, whether it's a sales call, whether it's a follow-up, whether it's getting a client right in front of you and having a conversation, because I'm a big believer that most of the sales happen from a conversation. How much of your day is spent on pay time and how much of your day is spent on other things that really aren't in line with creating revenue and generating income?
Yeah, it makes sense, man. I like that. And usually too, when you'll recognize that all the other, so-called quote unquote things that I have to get done, which are not a part of your core beliefs, the things that you want to do, but you just clutter your day with them. If you don't do them, the world doesn't end. If you don't check Facebook, the world's not going to end. Social selling is important, but there's a difference between actual working than browsing and aimlessly just scrolling through people's profile. And if you think that you have to do this at the first thing in the day, if you don't do it, the world's not going to end. You can, focus on other meaningful things, man.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One of the things too, I like what you mentioned, someone taught this to me before, was the word practice. And if you look at doctors or lawyers, they're practicing an attorney or practicing, pediatrician. Like they've gone to school for so long, but they're still practicing what they're doing every day. And I think that's the same concept with us too. You need to practice your art. And the more you practice something, the more, I guess, proficient you become at that. And you become more of an expert in that chosen field. So setting up that routine and making it a practice where it becomes habitual over time and it becomes a part of you. And those important things are what, things that mean the most. Those are the things that stick with you. So I just really, I enjoy that, man. So thanks for sharing that.
Thanks, Tom.
As we get ready to wrap up today, and we kind of understand a little bit further now, we want to take our lives and take control of ourselves, so to speak, and give ourselves the best person that we can possibly be. What's one major takeaway from our whole discussion today? If there's one thing someone can, walk away with and say, man, that hit me. Devon got me with that one. What's that one thing?
Yeah, I think the one thing is to take the time to give yourself the gift of your own attention. I think fill that cup and go out there and create things in the world from the overflow of your cup so you can really create the life and satisfaction and fulfillment that you want.
Love it, man. Now, if listeners want to get in touch with you, want to connect with you, be your friend, might say, hey, man, this guy sounds like a good coach, can help me. What's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah. And before I get into that, I just want to say thank you, Donald. You're doing some great work on this show. It's really, I listen to your podcast and you're doing a lot to bring value to the world. So I just wanted to first say thank you.
Appreciate it.
And people can, man. Yeah. So people can find me on Twitter at Devon Bandison, DEVON BANDISON. My website is www.devonbandison.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram under my name. Really active on social media. Give me a shout out. You got a question, you want to touch base, or you want to talk about something about work life or creating the life you want, give me a shout out.
Awesome, man. Well, we really appreciate this. We're going to make sure we get this out to the world so folks can connect with you, man. Thanks for coming on the show, Devon.
Hey, Donald. Thank you. It was my pleasure. Have a great day, everyone.
Some good stuff there, man. Thanks so much, Devon, for coming on the show. I appreciate that. You gave me some interesting things to think about, some ways that I can change my paradigm and to adjust the way that I think about scheduling and how I plan my days. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And if you'd like to connect with Devon, just simply go to thesalesevangelist.com/the word episode number 262. Again, thesalesevangelist.com/the word episode, then the numbers 262. He gave us a lot of great insights, gave us a lot of great information, but you got to take this stuff, you got to apply it in order to see the difference in your life. We can't just listen to these great podcasts and then all of a sudden, go off and go back into what we were doing before. We have to change. And sometimes change is uncomfortable. He mentioned that. But the more you do this, the better off you're going to be and you'll see greater results. All in all, I want you to be successful. I want you to be happy. Our guest later this week is Kevin Cruz, and again, he has this great book. You can find all information about it. Just simply go to our website. You can check it out there, thesalesevangelist.com. I'll put information in the show note. It's the episode 262, so salesevangelist.com/the word episode 262. Check out the Audible gift. Go ahead and go to audibletrial.com/TSE. Search for Kevin's book. We'll have it there in our show notes as well. But you can get a free copy and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/TSE. Again, all this will be in our show notes. I want you to be successful. I want you to be happy. Most importantly, I want you to go out and do big things.